Hey guys, what's going on? It's me, here to talk a little bit about the Tucker Carlson interview with Ice Cube. Recently, Ice Cube, the rapper, of course, Ice Cube, rapper slash actor, star of such movies as Friday, Boys in the Hood, um, uh, member of rap groups like West Side Connection, NWA, a really rap pioneer. Uh, hey Lisa, what's going on? um, from the late 80s and early 90s, especially when he was really rapping heavily. Sat down with Tucker Carlson, of course. You have a video on Tucker Carlson uh, when he got fired from Fox News, of course, former Fox News host. Really controversial, conservative anchorman slash newscaster. Now he's kind of branched out on his own, and he's had his own internet show. We had the interview with Andrew Tate recently. We talked a little bit about that in the last video, and now he has an interview with Ice Cube. So, starting off this interview, he says, he immediately comes out the gate, Tucker Carlson does, and he says, "You're going to get a lot of hate for this because you're sitting down with me." Obviously, they come from two sides of the political spectrum. Ice Cube, unlike most rappers, is is and was a very a politically minded individual. Out of all the members of NWA, he was the most politically minded. It was he who he wrote the most of the raps for NWA. So he penned the song "Fuck the Police," their political anthem that many see as a prelude to the Rodney King riots in 1992. And then when he branched out on his own in 1991, he hooked up with Public Enemy and he became heavily affiliated with the Nation of Islam. Even Boys in the Hood, his acting role, his first prominent acting role that same year in 1991, had a lot of political overtones. Remember, the character of Doughboy is famous for saying, they either don't know, don't care, or don't want to know what's going on in the hood. They being the outside world, the mainstream society, mostly at that time, 1991, the Republican regime of George H.W. Bush. In the famous diss song "No Vaseline" against NWA, he was accused of making anti-Semitic remarks, and he was sued by the Anti-Defamation League and other Jewish groups. So he was at the political forefront of the racial tensions of the early 1990s that we talked a lot about on this channel. So obviously, he's a very left wing, or was a very left wing, anti cop in a sense type of rapper, power to the people, very politically conscious. And Tucker Carlson is not. So Tucker Carlson immediately starts, like I said, off saying, "Well, why are you sitting down with me? Aren't you going to get a lot of flack for this?" And Ice Cube immediately says, "Yeah, I am, because a lot of people in my community don't agree that I should sit down with someone who, like Tucker Carlson, again, his record speaks to white supremacist, anti-black, anti-immigrant. Some of the things that he used to say on Tucker Carlson Tonight, his show, could be deemed as, racist. So why would the question does come to mind? Why would Ice Cube sit down with somebody like this? But Ice Cube immediately answers and says, "Well, yeah, that's true. I would face a lot of flack for it, but um, I believe in talking to people. I believe in engaging people. I believe in debating people. I don't believe in shutting people out." And they go into the relationship between, and immediately they dive right into it. They go into the relationship between black people and the modern day Democratic Party. Now, one thing I respected about Tucker Carlson, he doesn't try to, in the interview, he doesn't try to say things that are disingenuous and untrue. A lot of times, Republican politicians, in an effort to try to sway the black community to the Republican or conservative side will often say things that are half true or not completely true at all and completely disingenuous, like the slogan that the Dems are the real racist, and try to equate the modern day Democratic Party with the Democratic Party during the Civil War, which just isn't true. We know about that history, and trying to pretend like it doesn't exist or that the Democratic Party of today is the exact same party of the 1860s to the 1960s is false and is misleading. You know, we called that out several times on this channel. Tucker doesn't do that. Tucker basically says, well, he's letting Ice Cube answer the question, and Ice Cube does answer the question. Ice Cube uses the metaphor of a dance. He says, when you go to a dance, you dance with the person who brought you to the dance. You don't dance with other people at the dance, which is true. Which is basically he's accusing the modern day Democratic Party, particularly the administration of President Biden and Vice President Harris, of making a bunch of promises to the black community, not just them, but mostly them. You know what I mean? Because they're in charge right now, of making a bunch of promises to the black community and not fulfilling on those promises, and instead focusing their attention on other communities. And mostly Biden Harris administration, because after 2020, the big debacle of George Floyd and the George Floyd situation, Joe Biden did nothing for the black community, even though it was almost entirely the black community who got him into office. It was there were more black voters that voted for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris than voted for Barack Obama in both the 2008 and 2012 elections. Lisa just sent me another picture. Thank you. In both the 2012 and 2008 elections, more black people voted for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris than voted for Barack Obama. Joe Biden had the biggest African American voter turnout in American history. And what does President Biden do? President Biden, instead of signing an anti-black hate bill into law, he signs an anti-Asian hate bill into law. Now, people will say, well, Jay, of course, because Donald Trump was blaming the Asian community. He came up with the slogan, the China flu or the Kung flu. He was blaming the Asian community for COVID, and there was a lot of reaction against anti-Asian sentiment. And there was the shootout in the nail salon in 2020 in Atlanta. So there was a lot of anti-Asian hate crimes. And even Ice Cube himself, because of his song Black Korea in the 90s, was accused of anti-Asian sentiment. And then there was that slogan, Stop Asian Hate, right, in 2020. But that was 2020. That was 1 year. We're talking about, with the black community, over 500 years plus of discrimination, chattel slavery, and a whole bunch of discriminations that we've gone over in the past in this video, and nothing. They have 1 year of hardship and they get an anti-Asian hate bill, one mass shooting, and they get an anti-Asian hate bill. If that was the case, why was there no anti-black hate bill signed into law in 2014 and 15 when the Charleston shooting happened with Dylan Roof? Why was there no anti-Asian hate bill when there was the shooting in Buffalo in the supermarket? Why was there no anti-black hate bill when there were other mass shootings and other targetings of African Americans throughout history? They have only 1 year of hardship and they get all this. They get the red carpet rolled out to them. Likewise, the LGBTQ community. The Biden and Harris administration and the Democratic Party as a whole has gone out of their way to do everything they can for the LGBTQ community. As soon as something happens to the LGBTQ community, they are ready to roll the red carpet out. They are ready to bend over backwards to please the members of the LGBTQ community, even though the LGBTQ community is not loyal to them, because a large portion of the LGBTQ community voted for Donald Trump in the 2016 and 2020 elections. And likewise, with the Asian community. Asian community, they could swing either way. They can have voters in the Republican side and they can have voters in the Democratic side. And as a matter of fact, in most Asian communities, Asians are not heavily engaged in politics, but the ones that are, usually, especially in places like California and in the Northeast here in New York, they usually vote Republican. They're heavily Republican districts. Why? Because they are business owners, and Republican tax cuts favor business and property owners. So usually the Asian community will go in their local elections anyway to the Republican side. Maybe not the national election. Maybe in the national election they swing more Democratic, but the point is they're not loyal. They bargain for their vote. They don't automatically give their vote to one side. Like same thing with the LGBTQ community, the white LGBTQ community. Because when people talk about the LGBTQ community as a political bloc, they're really talking about the white LGBTQ community, not the black LGBTQ community, because the white LGBTQ community pushes the black LGBTQ community's voice down. They don't really let them be heard. There's a lot of racism unspoken in the LGBTQ community. I mean, there are dating apps, um, lesbian and gay dating apps, where they outright say no blacks, no Asians. You know what I mean? So, as quiet as it's kept, that's not a secure alliance. There's a lot of racism within the LGBTQ community. A lot of them, like I said, especially in 2016, when Trump was going on this tirade, this anti-Islamic tirade, and using Islamic homophobia against um, the Muslim community, and saying, well, see, you tell the LGBTQ community, you had to vote for us because if you don't, the Democrats are going to let in all these Muslims, and Muslims are strictly religious, and they're going to start to vote um, against you and start to pass Sharia law in your districts, and they're going to start to repeal same-sex marriage and everything. Meanwhile, it's the Republicans that were trying to do that, but they were trying to use the Muslim community against the LGBTQ community, and a lot of the LGBTQ people fell for it. You had advocates on the right in 2016 like Milo Yiannopoulos, Dave Rubin, people that were saying, well, if you want to preserve your right to be gay, then you got to vote for Republicans, and a lot of them fell for it. And again, with the LGBTQ community, like with the Asian community, you have a lot of upper class people, upper middle class people that move into these predominantly African American communities like South Central Los Angeles that Ice Cube brought up, and they raised the property value. Ice Cube brought up in the interview an instance with when he came to his father, how his father purchased his home, his childhood home that he grew up in, very cheap, like for $37,000, and now the property value is like $600,000 to the point where this predominantly African American community of South Central Los Angeles can't be lived there. And who are the first people that come into a neighborhood when it's being gentrified, when it's being fixed up? We see this in Brooklyn. We see this in Harlem. We see this, of course, like I keep talking about, in South Central Los Angeles, the South Side of Chicago, any predominantly African American community that's historically African American. Watts in Los Angeles, Compton in California. It's it's the LGBTQ community here in my neighborhood. That's predominantly Hispanic, working class Hispanic for generations. There's hardly any working class Hispanic families here anymore. In lower working class and lower middle class Hispanic families, because the LGBTQ moves in to these really expensive. The white LGBTQ community moves into these really expensive apartment complexes and houses and brownstones because they're less of a liability. They don't have children most of the time, and they don't raise families. We're talking about younger LGBTQ people. You know what I'm saying? not older LGBTQ people that might be married and have families. I'm talking about 20 somethings, 30 somethings, uh, uh, members of the LGBTQ community. And if they're not directly LGBTQ, they are artisans or liberal types, far leftists, um, yuppies basically. And they start to move in, and when they start to move in, the property values go up, and working class minority families can't afford to live in their historic communities. Lisa says all the time this happens. You know, when you see a Starbucks, there goes the neighborhood because you won't be living there in the next 4 to 5 to 6 to 7 to 10 years if you are working class and you don't have um, an agreement with the apartment complex, with the people who own the apartment complex, that they can't raise the rent. You know what I'm saying? Some people do. I know people that do, that live in these communities, but a lot of people don't. Gentrification is a very real thing. So first they move the LGBTQ families, and then eventually they'll move the LGBTQ families out, and they'll move the regular quote unquote white families in with kids. But usually in urban centers like Los Angeles or New York, usually that doesn't happen. Usually, um, yeah, Ice Cube. I'm getting there, Lisa. Ice Cube talked about gatekeepers, people, and then he asked the question, and Lisa's this is something that Lisa is getting at when it comes to gatekeepers. He asked the question, um, do you think that the hip hop community will that you'll face a backlash against speaking with me on behalf of the hip hop community? And why do rappers tend to be more outspoken than other Hollywood celebrities? And Ice Cube brought up the point of gatekeepers, people that say that you can't have certain opinions, that you can't have certain viewpoints if you belong to a certain community. That there are people that benefit from, you know, the conflict of this. And this is the point where he brought up, and there he said that Ice Cube said that rappers don't really go by that. Rappers really have been known for pushing the envelope, and he quoted Rakim, where and he said Rakim said, "It's not where you're from, it's where you at." And that leads me into the conversation about race. This is the one that a lot of people are getting on Ice Cube about because the conversation comes around to race. And Tucker Carlson says, "Do you think that you face a lot of racism on the daily?" And then he says, "Do you think that race occupies a tremendous amount of the struggles that you face?" And Ice Cube says he thinks, and this is the quote directly from Ice Cube. I'm gonna pull it up. Ice Cube. Ice Cube says race takes up too much space, indicating that race, the conversation surrounding race, takes up a lot of space in the consciousness of people. And people are getting on him about this because people are saying, well, you're being highly dismissive. You're dismissing the conversation of race. Here you had a perfect opportunity to bring forth the conversation of race and racial justice to a person like Tucker Carlson that is really myopic when it comes to the conversation of race. And here you don't. You skirt around the issue. And I kind of think there's some validity to that. I kind of think like towards the end of the interview, Ice Cube kind of backs up. Tucker Carlson, the questions that he was getting at with Ice Cube was like you wanted him to speak against the Democratic Party and you wanted him to say what the Democratic Party isn't doing. But then Tucker Carlson, on the other hand, doesn't really say what the Republican Party or conservatives are planning to do. That's my whole issue with this. It's like, okay, we're talking about what the Democratic Party is not doing, the whole dance metaphor. But he never gets around to asking Tucker Carlson the question, okay, if the Democratic Party isn't doing anything and you want me to lead a coalition of leading people away from the Democratic Party towards the Republican Party, what is the Republican Party going to do for Black Americans? Are they going to do anything? Are they offering any solutions? Going around it and saying, well, race takes up too much space. Race takes up too much of our time and occupies too much of our mind. And not getting him to really answer anything what his side plans to do is a cop-out, in my opinion. Now, he asked Ice Cube the question, does he feel like he faces a lot of racism on the daily? He, personally, he Ice Cube. And I like Ice Cube's answer on this one because Ice Cube said, of course I don't. I'm Ice Cube. I'm a famous celebrity. People recognize me. Cops recognize me. People in authority recognize me. Even though I'm a Black man, I'm a highly profile Black celebrity. I'm not, just your regular everyday, your regular everyday average Joe walking around. I'm Ice Cube. I've been known in this country ubiquitously for since 1986. You know what I mean? And that's what Tucker says. Has anything really changed since 1986? And he says a lot has changed. Ice Cube says, a lot has changed, but a lot hasn't really changed. And that's where I want to zero in against Ice Cube. In Ice Cube's mentality, yeah. 101101.
Oh, another one, right?
Yeah. In Ice Cube's mentality, things haven't really changed. I mean, things have changed a lot. But Ice Cube is living a celebrity lifestyle. He's living around different people. He's surrounded by different people. So to say that he is kind of out of touch with what is going on every day on the ground is an understatement because he absolutely is. He's been a Hollywood celebrity by his own admission in the interview for decades now. Over 30 years, right now. Basically, so he's been surrounded. He's been surrounded by people, in the celebrity field for decades and decades. So he's not so much in touch with everyday people. So he can't really speak, in my opinion, for the everyday average Joe. Now, was he banned? He was banned from several other shows. The View didn't want to have him on. Oprah didn't want to have him on. He was blacklisted from these shows because back in 2020, as we remember, he proposed his platinum plan to the Republican Party. And just for daring to speak to the Republicans, he was blacklisted for that. Now, he had a show called Black and White that cast was also blacklisted from there. Ice Cube, real name O'Shea Jackson, said that he was prevented in the past from appearing in certain forums because of his views. He claimed that The View and Oprah wouldn't have him on during his promotional period for his massive hit film Barbershop. And while producing a show, Black and White, he said each show's entire cast was invited on Oprah's show on two separate occasions, but he was not invited. So there you go. He was blacklisted. And the thing is, he wasn't. People were all cool with him when he was saying what they wanted to hear. Now that he's saying something different, and now that he's willing to sit down and see what the other side has to offer with his platinum plan, now they're blacklisting him. Now, and that is typical of any side of the political spectrum. To be honest with you, if tomorrow he said something, now all the Republicans and all the conservatives are giving him heaping tons of praise on him because he met with Tucker Carlson. He's saying the things that they want to hear. But if he were to say something opposite to what they want to hear and call them out on their BS, he would be blacklisted again by them and called a far leftist, a radical, whatever kind of other names. We've seen this. We've seen this a lot. You know what I mean? With not just black celebrities, but with any kind of celebrity. If you're saying what one side wants to hear, they want you to be completely against the other side. They view it as a zero-sum game. You can't agree with some things from one side and disagree with other things from another side. You can, for example, say that, like Ice Cube does say in this interview, that because they go on to the question of masculinity. He talks about masculinity again with Ice Cube because Ice Cube, let's face it, is a masculine figure and an embodiment of masculinity for a lot of young men, just like with Andrew Tate. And they talk about masculinity. He says, well, how do you feel about people saying that masculinity is toxic, or that everything that men do is toxic, and that men are just bad people, right? It's kind of reverse sexism against men. Everything that men do is evil. Everything masculine is evil. That young boys should be less masculine. Young boys should be more feminine. I'm paraphrasing, but he basically says that. And Ice Cube says, how can you tell me to be other than what I am myself? This is who I naturally am. How can you tell me how to react? You know what I'm saying? Just the basic stuff that a lot of guys are saying. They're sick of having their natural traits, their natural tendencies, pushed to the side. You know what I'm saying? In an effort to make, they want to make women's position in society better, but they want to do it at the expense of men, which I think is fucked up. And Ice Cube goes right at this, says the exact same thing that Andrew Tate and other people are saying, about this. You don't want to hype women up at the expense of men. You don't want to hype women up and then turn the battering ram right around and say, oh, so women have to be higher, so men have to be lower? That's bullshit. You know what I mean? So you want everyone to adopt feminine traits. You want the society to be completely feminized. So basically, you're telling men that their nature is evil. You know what I mean? You're telling men that they are bad people just for simply being men. you know what I mean? You're doing the same sexist shit you were doing with women, but in an opposite direction. You know what I mean? And that's going to, and that is now causing a lot of psychological damage among men in our society. So Tucker Carlson asked that question, and Ice Cube, I think, answered that question satisfactory. Another question that he asked was about the police. Obviously, Ice Cube has the song "Fuck the Police," so Ice Cube has a contentious history with the police department, especially in Los Angeles. So, and of course, Republicans, conservatives are Blue Lives Matter people. They're rah the police. But Ice Cube says that, police have a job. He says an interesting thing. He says it's like the military. If you'd have asked me in 1946, was the military a bad thing? I'd have said the same thing that you'd have probably said, that military is the military, that it's an organization and they have one primary job when it comes to police. They have the primary job of going home safely to their families. So a lot of times they will do things that are deemed inappropriate or are deemed fucked up by us as people, but you got to understand too the predicament that they're in. This, I think, is kowtowing to Tucker Carlson's and the Republicans' view. I think this is bullshit. You know what I mean? I mean, yes, the police have a dangerous job. The police have are faced with a lot of crime and a lot of hardships on the street. And no, I don't agree with the defund the police slogan, but I think that police are trigger happy and they are um, willing to shoot without provocation a lot of the times. Do I think that the community plays a role? And I think the dangerous elements in the community play a role as well. And what he doesn't bring up is the role that rap music and other forms of entertainment that Ice Cube has been a part of feed into the aggression of of the society and the alienation of the society. Ice Cube has often said, and he said this in the NWA movie, which was a scene taken out of real life, where uh, he basically said, "We as the rappers, we report on what's going on in the hood, so we didn't cause the situation that's going on in the hood. We're just reporting on the situation that's going on in the hood." I think that might have been true then when gangster rap was something new, but I think you cannot absolve yourself of the role that you yourself play in feeding into this. It might be a reality, but you're not helping it. You're not trying to put it out. You as the rapper, it's not you Ice Cube, because Ice Cube has changed over the years, as we could see in this interview. But in the past, he's he stoked the flames of it. You know what I mean? People like him, the rappers, the gangster rappers, they stoke the flames of it. They put wood into the fire, making it worse. They might have not caused the fire, they might have not started the fire, but they put wood into the fire to make the situation worse, especially in the generation post gangster rap. It's hard for um, us to imagine, but there was a time when music promoted, especially rap music, promoted a lot of positivity in the community. But the 90s, late 80s, early 90s, when Ice Cube came out, it was promoting a lot of negativity. So the role that Ice Cube in his music and movies have played in feeding into the aggression and alienation between police and communities of color has to be stated. And Tucker Carlson didn't call Ice Cube out on that either. You know what I mean? And the role that Tucker Carlson and people like him play in feeding the flames of racism on the behalf of cops and the alienation and the danger that cops may feel going into communities of color because they're fed a constant barrage of racist stereotypes and anti-black stereotypes in their shows in popular media by people like Tucker Carlson. The role that Tucker Carlson's speech plays in feeding hatred and animosity on the other side is not talked about in this interview. You know what I mean? This interview kind of came off as like Ice Cube being kind of disingenuous, Tucker Carlson kind of being disingenuous, kind of kissing each other's asses, not really saying, I feel anything real, you know, a little bit, you know what I mean? But not really coming at each other in the way that I would have I would have approached it anyway. Especially when that issue, because these guys, Tucker Carlson and Ice Cube, they're public figures. And again, like I always say with Candace Owens and Ben Shapiro and these other people, I say with the rappers too, people are free to say what they want to say. But just know that what you're going to say has consequences and repercussions in the actual world. And that there are a lot of people that will hear your rhetoric and they won't be able to process the rhetoric in the same way that you're processing it. They won't be able to separate. And rappers always did this in the 90s. They would always say, "Oh, I'm not a role model. I'm just reporting on how it is. I'm keeping it real." absolving themselves of any personal responsibility in their lyrics, saying that, oh, I didn't cause the situation, but you didn't make the situation any worse, any better, rather. And conservative commentators do the exact same thing. Oh, I'm not causing racism. I'm not causing discrimination by the things that I'm saying. I'm just reporting the news. No, but you're reporting the news with a slant towards the other side. You know what I mean? So if we're going to talk about reconciliation and we're going to talk about really talking real and really keeping it real with each other, there has to be some sort of pushback on either side. Tucker Carlson has to say, well, what about the role that your music and music like it, gangster rap music, that doesn't represent the whole of African American music, because African American music in this country is vast. It doesn't just include gangster rap and all that kind of stuff and all that kind of negativity. There was a time in African American music where there was positivity. There was a time in African American music that it was typified by love, that it was typified, and even in the early rap, by education and edutainment, as KRS-One said. And Ice Cube, some of Ice Cube's music was that, but some of Ice Cube's music, let's just face it, and the kind of music that he later inspired, not him specifically, but he later inspired, especially on the West Coast, was feeding into negativity, praising Bloods, Crips, other West Coast gangs. You know what I mean? That might have been a reality, but just because it was a reality, they didn't have to go forth and promote that kind of negativity. And likewise, conservatives might not have caused the racial situation in America, but people like Tucker Carlson feed into the racial situation in America and stoke the flames of racial animosity each and every day by painting African Americans as super predators or as dangerous criminals or um, as a pariah, a fifth column, or out to destroy white people, out to destroy Western civilization. So someone hears that and they're a cop, of course they're going to become militarized. Of course they're going to become radicalized. Of course they're going to become racist and look at every African American that they encounter on the daily as an enemy. Likewise, with the young African American youth, of course they're going to look at cops as the enemy when they're listening to songs like Fuck the Police, when they're listening to songs like Cop Killer, of course they're going to become that. So the role that rhetoric plays and the role that speech plays, with freedom comes responsibility. So you have to understand that although Tucker and Ice Cube have the right to say what they want to say, with their freedom of speech comes responsibility of speech as well. You know, and in this one, neither side said that the other side is to blame for feeding the racial animosity between cops and the community, and they are, because I grew up in hip hop. You know what I'm saying? I know what hip hop says. I grew up in these neighborhoods. I know what the neighborhoods believe, and I'm not saying they believe it because of rap, but the rap lyrics only reinforce the negative stereotypes they already have about police and people in authority. And likewise, I watched a lot of Fox News back in the day. You know, you know what I mean? Because as much as I didn't agree with them, hell, adversarial point of views were more entertaining than regular point of views like on MSNBC that I did agree with that was completely boring. And I listened to what conservative commentators would say. You know what I mean? So I know what both sides say, and I know the role that both sides play in defeating into the animosity that the other has. You know, it doesn't happen in a vacuum. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like uh, Ice Cube didn't push back enough on that issue. You know, saying, "Oh, cops are just doing their job." That's bullshit. That's what Blue Lives Matter says. So you're not, you Ice Cube are not facing the brunt of police brutality. So save it. You know, because you're a celebrity. By his own admission, he's not facing any of that. Anything else, Lisa, you would like to add to your thoughts of the interview? About Obama? You can add it here, Liz, about Obama. I didn't catch. Uh, I didn't catch that part. What he said about Barack Obama. Okay, I'm seeing it now. Lisa's saying she wrote what he said. Uh, Ultimately, Ice Cube feels like Obama, like all his White House predecessors, did nothing to change his life. Tucker and the rapper actor also broed out on BLM. Cube accused Cube criticized the organization for not improving the lives of black people he knows and loves. Yeah, were there any lies there told? I mean, for real. Other than okay, let's say about BLM, right? Lisa mentioned about Obama, but let's say BLM, right? BLM uh, did not improve the lives of any uh, black people that any of us know, not just the people that Ice Cube knows, but the black anybody in the black community, right? You didn't. It didn't really do much of anything. It's a bourgeoisie organization. It's an upper middle class organization. It's primarily focused rather than on the black victims of police brutality. It's primarily focused on pushing an LGBTQ agenda. You know, what I mean? A socialist Marxist agenda, which a lot of people are not for that. You know what I mean? It purports to be against all lives matter, but in reality, it's pro all lives matter. It's not. The organization is not zeroing in on just police brutality against black men and women. It's including everything. It's including a broad based platform, and that's where they go wrong. You know what I'm saying? If you're going to have an organization that is just focusing on black police brutality, then that's what you're going to have. Now, when it comes to Obama, right? What the point that Lisa's bringing up is absolutely true. We know that Obama faced a lot of blockades. People that say Obama didn't do anything for the black community have been being intentionally dishonest. They're forgetting what life was like under his presidency and the roadblocks that he faced. As soon as the man came into power, you had conservative commentators at that time, like Rush Limbaugh, outright saying that they hoped Barack Obama failed. You had lawmakers passing every single law to try and prevent him from doing anything, and then he does nothing. And then people are like, well, what did he do for their community? Of course, he couldn't do anything because he was completely blockaded from it. So Ice Cube knows that, and Ice Cube is being intentionally dishonest to kiss the ass of Tucker Carlson in this interview. Ice Cube knows the problems that Barack Obama faced during his presidency. You know what I'm saying? Don't act. I mean, you weren't born yesterday, Ice Cube. You know what I mean? Like, you know, it's not like you were like uh, a child during the Obama administration, and you're like, oh, well, what did he do for us? I don't know, but no, you were an adult, Ice Cube, during that time. You know, you know exactly what he could and couldn't do, and you know, and you're a smart man, you're an intelligent man, a very intelligent man, and you know the way that the U.S. legal system works, right? You know that the president doesn't have ultimate power, that there are separation of power, that there are divisions within the government, the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. You know that. You know what I'm saying? So to turn around and say, especially after the 2012 election, to turn around and say, well, Obama didn't do anything for it. But what, again, does a president, is a president a miracle worker? When people used to say that, and people say it now subsequently, but even during Obama's presidency, when people used to say that, I used to always say, well, what do you want a president to do? What, you want him to wave a magic wand and make the ghetto disappear? You want him in his little 8 years, in his short 8 year time span, to make 400 or 500 plus years of oppression and racism and systematic discrimination disappear in 8 years? You want 400 plus years of oppression, which Ice Cube knows. Ice Cube is well aware of that. He's well read. He knows that that's the case. You want 400 plus years of oppression to disappear within 8 years? How's that possible? You know what I mean? You're not thinking realistic. So the idea that Obama didn't do anything. See, BLM can do more than Obama can because BLM is on the outside. BLM is an advocacy group. Why was Martin Luther King more powerful as a preacher and as a civil rights activist than as a politician? Because Martin Luther King could make the politicians bend to his will by doing or not doing certain things. We saw this in Selma, right? He basically said in the movie Selma, in his meeting with President Johnson at that time, if President Johnson doesn't back the Voting Rights Act of 1965, that he, Martin Luther King, wouldn't tell his supporters to support Johnson. And he would basically back off, and in his place would be more militant black organizations like the Black Panther Party or like the Nation of Islam, and organizations that the white power structure didn't want to deal with. You know what I'm saying? So he was able to leverage outsiders, political advocacy groups could do that. People that are in power cannot do that because once you're in power, now you have a responsibility to other parts of the electorate. You just can't work for one specific group. The reason why the white community could work for one specific group is because their specific group is the majority of the population. So if a white president does something for the white community, they could just pretend like they're doing it for the whole community, the whole country, because the almost the entire nation, 75% is Caucasian. You know what I'm saying? They could do that. You know what I'm saying? But 12% of the population, if Obama were to do things specifically for the African American community, just and come out right and say it, and even if he didn't come out right and say it, even if he just did it, you know what I'm saying? People would accuse him, oh, well, he's showing favoritism. He's showing favoritism to a particular minority group. You know what I'm saying? And that would have been bad for him. He would have been got elected, or he probably would have got assassinated. So, an advocacy group, a lobbyist group, in my opinion, has more leverage than a politician. That's why you work with the advocacy groups to push the president. That's what Frederick Douglass did with Abraham Lincoln to push him into the Civil War. That's what Martin Luther King did with Johnson to push him to do the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. The advocacy groups push the president, not the president takes on the agenda of the advocacy group. You know what I mean? That's not the way that American politics works. Um, for example, APAC, the Jewish advocacy group, the Jewish lobbyist group that lobbies for Israel. What APAC does, and I always come back to this Israel example. I know I bring up Israel basically in every video. you know, sorry for that, but that's the example that I always think of. Right? APAC, what they do is they will send members of their organization to each political candidate. And they will say, we will back you, we will throw our support behind you if you do this for Israel. If this candidate, if Joe Biden or Donald Trump or Barack Obama or George W. Bush or Bill Clinton, any political candidate nowadays, Ramaswamy or DeSantis, throws their support behind Israel and says that they're pro-Israel, we, APAC, will back you. We'll throw our support behind you. You know what I mean? We'll tell our voters to vote for you. If you say with your mouth and with your military might and your dedication and your dollars that you back Israel and you won't back the Palestinians. And that's the way that AIPAC gets every single American politician. No American president thus far has said anything anti-Israel because they know that AIPAC has the power. This is what the LGBTQ community does as well. The LGBTQ community tells these specific politicians, if you back us, we'll back you. If you scratch our back, we'll scratch yours. But organizations like AIPAC or GLAD or CARE for the Muslim community, they don't come out and they don't support other communities at their own expense. They support only their community. And they say, look, if you're not going to do something specifically for us, specifically for just us, and push, you got to be specific now. You can't say, well, you had to do something for the black community, but what do you want me to do for the black community? You know what I mean? Like, do you want me to pass a reparations bill? Do you want me to pass an anti-hate legislation bill? What is it you want? AIPAC comes with their demands as clear. They want the United States military and the United States president with their mouths and with their military might to back the state of Israel against Israel's enemies like Iran. You know what I'm saying? LGBTQ community, they want specific demands. They wanted Obama to put in specific judges that will pass same-sex marriage throughout all the 50 states. They got it done because their lobbyist groups spoke for them. But the black lobbyist groups, they only vote for one candidate. So it's like dating. If you're dating a specific woman, right, or a man, and you let them know that you don't have any options, they will treat you however because they know you can't go anywhere else because you don't have other options. You don't have any other place to go. Nobody is interested in you. But if you play the field a little bit and you try to make them a little bit jealous and you try to say, well, if I don't treat them right, they'll go to this other person. And it makes it hard we only have two parties, but still the black lobbyist groups could play both parties. They could do that. You know what I'm saying? They could have did it with Donald Trump because Donald Trump is a person that he wants to be liked. He yearns to be liked. He yearns for approval of other people. He has a very fragile ego. So people could have these advocacy groups. They could say, Trump, the black community loves you. You know what I mean? But they'll love you even more if you do this, if you pass this bill. And he wanting to be liked and he wanting the approval of the black community. Even Cardi B said this. You know what I mean? I remember when he hosted the football team and he gave them like the McDonald's and Cardi B came out with a video and Cardi B basically said that Trump wants to be liked by the black community. So if they would have did that, he would have done what they wanted. He would have said, yeah, uh, the black people do love me. Let me pass this legislation. And that would have made the Democrats jealous. And they would have said, well, we thought we had the black community in the bag. We thought they were a sure thing to vote for us. But no, apparently we're wrong. So apparently we have to work harder. That's what Ice Cube wanted to do, but people didn't want to do that. Early at least it's early in July, Ice Cube also met with anti-vaxxer Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Now, the anti-vax situation, I'm past that because COVID is both basically a non-issue right now. So, in my opinion, that's not such a big deal. But people are still anti-vax. I don't agree with the anti-vax position. I think it's a crazy, kooky position. Uh, but hey, we talked about the Tuskegee experiment. We talked about other instances in world history and American history where populations have been poisoned, and some people believe it and other people don't. Hey, what Ice Cube is basically, I agree with that. What Ice Cube is saying, Ice Cube is saying we shouldn't be afraid to meet with people. You know what I'm saying? We shouldn't be afraid to hear what they have to say. Why is it that some people's viewpoints are beyond the pale and other people's viewpoints are? How can you change the hearts and minds of people if you never speak to them? Look at Daryl Davis, for example. Daryl Davis, I don't know if you guys know, he is a musician. He's appeared on, he's done a few TED Talks. He's done a few um, um, he's done an interview with Joe Rogan. And he's a black man who has met and befriended members of the Ku Klux Klan. You know what I mean? Now, people will say, oh, well, how can he do that? How can he have any self-respect? What is he, an Uncle Ruckus type, right? Or a sellout? But no. What he did, and he went in there and he befriended them and he showed them another side. He showed them why their viewpoints are ignorant, their viewpoints are stupid, and a lot of them changed their minds, on the issue. But you can never change somebody's mind if you just don't work with them or you just don't speak to them. So I think automatically when somebody meets with an anti-vaxxer or somebody meets with somebody that they perceive as politically fringe, automatically oh, that person's wrong, that person's this and that. I'm gonna read some comments from some people in the black community with regards to one lady, Colorful History said, on brand, it's pathetic how much Tucker Carlson trashes black people on regular, and Ice Cube shows up in his front door with a stupid ass grin. That's a pattern of weaklings in our community. Uh, about this comment in particular, again, I do think she has a point. I think she's valid in some of her criticisms. I think Ice Cube did portray some weaknesses. I think Ice Cube could have pushed back on certain issues, but just meeting him is not a reason for weakness. I think Ice Cube has lost his edge over the years. I think old Ice Cube would have pushed back. Old Ice Cube would have been all militant and been up in his face and been like he was when they called him anti-Semitic in the 90s. He pushed back. New Ice Cube, he's like, he used to be a lion, now he's a lamb. Some of the shit, when they mention the police, I'm fully expecting Ice Cube to come with receipts. I'm fully expecting Ice Cube to come with vitriol. I'm fully expecting Ice Cube to be the Ice Cube that I remember from the 90s. And he comes with some punk shit. You know what I'm saying? He punked out. No receipts. He completely backed off. You know what I mean? So that was bullshit. She's right about that. You know what I'm saying? That woman there is 100% right. Not that he met with him, but okay, you're meeting with him, and you say you're going to engage in debate with him. You say you're going to argue back and forth, and you're going to be our advocate. You're going to advocate for us, right? In the BC, right? You're going to be our representative on the panel. But when you get up there, you start dancing around the issue. You start kissing his ass. You know what I'm saying? So you're not advocating for us now. You're advocating for yourself. You know what I'm saying? You're doing the same thing that you're accusing the Democrats of doing. You know what I'm saying? When you get up there, when you have the chance to do it, you don't do it. You don't push back. You know what I'm saying? You don't advocate for us. You don't advocate our point of view, especially on the role of police brutality, especially on the role of redistribution of funds to the black community, which the Platinum Plan was supposed to represent. You know what I'm saying? Here, you have your platform. You know what I'm saying? You were banished from The View. You were banished from Oprah. But you have your platform here. You have your platform with the enemy, the adversary, the ops. But you do nothing. You back off. You're allowed to smoke. You know what I'm saying? It's like a guy that he's up there, he's making drill music, let's say. And he's talking about, oh, when I get up into my ops neighborhood, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. Whatever rap song, right? And then when he gets up there, when he has the chance, when he's faced with his ops in his face, all he does is back off. All he does is act nice. All he does is, oh, I'm sorry, sir. Yes, sir, no, sir. Come on, man. You had your chance. You had your opportunity, but you did nothing. You sat there and you agreed with him. And you knew what he was saying was bullshit. And you let him lead you into questions. You let him make presumptions. When you should have said, nah, that's not how it is. You know, you know what I'm saying? Cops just aren't trying to go home to their families. Some cops are militarized. Some cops are racist. Some cops are targeting black men and black women. You know what I'm saying? You came with the right smoke for the LGBT community. You came with the right smoke for the yuppies. You came with the right smoke for the hypocritical Democrats. But you didn't come with the right smoke for the guy sitting right in front of you that represents the position that you're supposed to represent. You know, the opposition to the position you're supposed to represent. You didn't come with none of that smoke. You sat there. And you could have respectful interviews with the opposition party, and still represent your position and still stands 10 toes down on your position. You could do that because it's been done in several interviews. Jordan Peterson had an interview with Muhammad Hijab. You know, Jordan Peterson has said anti-Islamic things towards the Muslim community. And Muhammad Hijab is a representative of the Muslim community and advocates and gives dawah for the Muslim community, um, proselytizing for the Muslim community in the past. And when Muhammad Hijab sat down with Jordan Peterson, did Muhammad Hijab kowtow, co- bow down? Bow down. There's an example. Ice Cube in a song against Common in the 90s. He said him and the West Side Connection said they would never bow down. But did Muhammad Hijab bow down to Jordan Peterson? Did he say, yeah, the things you're saying about the Muslim religion, that's the truth, Jordan Peterson? Yeah, did he just sit there and take the blows from Jordan Peterson? No, he pushed back from Jordan Peterson. He represented his position pretty well. He's represented his position accurately. Same thing with Andrew Tate. When Andrew Tate sat down with Candace Owens, you know Candace Owens is Islamophobic. You know the stuff she said about Muslims. Did Andrew Tate say? Did Andrew Tate agree with her? Did he trash the Muslim community against agreeing with Candace Owens? No, he was respectful of Candace Owens, but he stood his ground in his position, and that's what Ice Cube should have done with regards to the black community and police against Tucker Carlson. But he didn't do it. He backed off like a punk. This other lady says Tucker Carlson was the next step for Ice Cube. He will endorse and campaign for the Republican nomination in 2024. Just watch. I don't know if he'll campaign for the Republican Party. I don't think so. I mean, I hope not, because that's not the goal of this exercise. The goal of this exercise is not to say, okay, we're dissatisfied with the Democrats, so we're just gonna jump over to the Republicans. That's bullshit. Because you can. The point is to make both parties do their best to try and get my vote, not to jump from one party to another. To make the two parties barter for your vote and work hard for your vote on the behalf of your community, not to sell your vote at a cheap price. Because what's the difference between selling your vote at a cheap price for one party and selling it at a cheap price to another party? You're complaining that the black community doesn't do enough to hold Democrats' feet to the fire and push and hold Democrats accountable for their actions towards the black community, but and that they should do more. But is an interview is all it's going to take for you to lead yourself and the people that you advocate for towards another party that they're not going to do really anything. They're not even paying lip service to advocating for your community. In fact, one of the guys that leads the polls in Florida, Ron DeSantis, he's polling very high with the Republican Party nowadays, is actually trying to cut Black history in schools. So is that the party you're going to vote for? No, the point is to remain independent. Say, I'm going to sit down with everybody that's willing to sit down with me, but I'm not giving my vote to nobody because I want what's best for my community, no matter what it takes and who I have to talk to, who I have to stand up to, not whose ass I have to kiss, who I have to stand up to with principle. And be an independent thinker. He's saying that people are against him for being an independent thinker, but moving from one party to another, my boy, is not being an independent thinker. You know what I'm saying? That's not being an independent thinker. That's just moving from one party to another. You know what I mean? That's not being an independent thinker. You know what I'm saying? That's like a woman said, "Oh, I'm a strong, independent woman," and she breaks up with one guy that's abusive or neglectful, and she goes to a completely another guy. That's not being a strong, independent woman, Mom. That's just going from one person to another. You know what I'm saying? The point is, you stand out there in the middle and you say, "Well, who's gonna give me the best deal? What does each party have to offer?" And you make them work for it. You sit down with everybody, and that's what nobody's getting. That's what Ice Cube's not getting. And that's what the Democrats that are against Ice Cube are not getting. You got to sit down with everybody and see what everybody's willing to offer you. When you're choosing a meal, right? And you're choosing between, say, Burger King or McDonald's, do you say, "Oh, I'm only loyal to McDonald's. If I go to Burger King, then I'm against McDonald's"? Or if I go to McDonald's, I'm against Burger King? No, you look at each menu of what McDonald's has to offer and Burger King has to offer, and you say, "Well, McDonald's might have better fries, but Burger King has better flame broiled burgers, right?" And you say, "Well, I like a little bit of what McDonald's has to offer. I like a little bit of what Burger King has to offer. But ultimately, I'm going to pick and choose what I take. I'm going to make them work for it. I'm going to make them become better because that's capitalism. That's the society that we live in. Um, Political parties compete for your vote. But if they feel like they don't have to compete, if they feel like, oh, that a sit down interview is all it takes, then that's what they'll give you. That's if that's enough to convince you. If rhetoric and words are enough to convince you, then that's what they'll give you: rhetoric and words and empty promises. You know what I'm saying? So the goal is not to switch from being being a slave to one master to being a slave to another master. The goal is to be an independent thinker and an independent person and stand on your own 2 feet and make both parties do for you. Because both parties are supposed to work for the African American community, because the African American community is the community. The FBA, the Foundational Black American Community, is the community that has suffered the most indignation in this country. And both parties know it, but both parties ignore it because it doesn't, they feel like, both parties feel like it doesn't take much to please that particular constituency. All it takes is words. They're moved by words. They're not moved by actions. They're moved by rhetoric. They're moved by flowery thoughts. They're moved by ideas. They're moved by powerful phrases like hope and change, like Obama was talking about in 2008, or some of the shit that Tucker Carlson and the other Republicans are talking about: structure and family values and things that don't really mean anything. They're just empty words. Yeah, well, the Chrissy Michelle thing, that's stupid. You know what I mean? Like, she's a singer. She got a gig. She sang at an Trump's inauguration. So what? You, you know. But I will call out the hypocrisy here on both sides, the left as well as the right. The left is saying, well, what does Ice Cube know? He's just a rapper. He doesn't know anything, right? Fuck him, right? But they were willing to make Cardi B their representative on the Democratic side when she interviewed Bernie Sanders or she interviewed Joe Biden. And she wasn't that. She was doing the same thing that Ice Cube is doing now with Tucker Carlson. She was doing the exact same thing with Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders. She was sitting there letting them offer a bunch of platitudes, a bunch of empty promises, a bunch of nice slogans, ear tickling, telling me what I want to hear, you know, greasing me up, not really offering me anything substantial. What are we talking about in terms of dollars and cents? Not what are we talking about in terms of, okay, we want a family structure, we want family values, we want justice, we want, you know, what does any of those terms mean? Get specific with me. Dollars and cents. What are you, Joe Biden, or you, Donald Trump, or you, Vivek Kashwami? This is the same thing with the Breakfast Club. Vivek Kashwami came up there, one of the Republican candidates for president now, Indian American, came up there at the Breakfast Club, and he started empty platitudes, same thing like Tucker Carlson. And everybody was like, oh, yeah. Okay, but what are we talking about in terms of dollars and cents that you're going to do? What are you going to do specifically? Not what are you going to do for, oh, everybody as a whole, or people of color, or poor and impoverished minority communities. No, get them to say, what are you going to do specifically for the African American community? You know what I'm saying? That's what he needs. Those are the questions that he needs to ask. Specific questions. Like the LGBT community asks specific questions to their candidates that they interview in their particular publications with their particular people. Not vague generalities, not everybody, not people of color, not marginalized groups, not this and that. Specifically for historically wronged injustice African American communities, what are you going to do? What is your political platform in regards to that? And if they start talking some bullshit, they start talking some trying to get out of jail free card, like, oh, racism is not as bad as it once was, or like Vivek Swami said in his interview with the Breakfast Club, or like Tucker Carlson said in this interview with Ice Cube, oh, cops are just trying to get home to their community. No, bullshit. Don't let them get out of that. Don't let them back off that. Trap them there. Say, wait a minute, what? And then start bringing up historical receipts when it comes to that. Start holding them. You say you want to you want to hold these politicians accountable, right? Hold them accountable. When you have them on their platform, when you have them on this platform, hold them accountable. And that's what these hip hop celebrities, be they Cardi B, be they Ice Cube, be they The Breakfast Club, Bernie Sanders, Vivek Swami, Pete Buttigieg, that's what they never do. They never corner them and say, stop giving me vague generalities, stop giving me lines of BS. Tell me specifically, what are you going to do for my community? But you never hear any of that shit. You hear platitudes, you hear feel goodery. Do I think people get blacklisted from the black community? You know, going back to this, no, I don't think you will, because people will forget about it tomorrow. That's the short attention spans of people. I don't think I said this with Cardi B, and I'll say this with Ice Cube. I respect Ice Cube. I respect what he's done in the as far as his contributions to hip hop and his contributions to the culture. I like Cardi B. I'm a fan of some of her songs, but I like the Breakfast Club sometimes. But I don't think that hip hop entertainers are supposed to be thought leaders in this regard. I don't think this is their role. Their role is they're supposed to entertain. Malcolm X has a clip where he's talking about in the 1960s, he says uh, that the white power structure will prop up uh, trumpet players, and you'll see like Lena Horne or other celebrities at the time, Dick Gregory, as leaders in as leaders, quote unquote, in the black community. He says the white community doesn't do this, and they don't. They don't. Does the white community troll out um entertain well let me take that back. Now they do. You know what I'm saying? But to an extent. Uh, I'm not saying no, I'm not saying they can't have opinions, Lisa. You're wrong. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying they can't have opinions. They can have opinions because I have a video going back to the Cardi B Kanye, the Cardi B Candace Owens situation when Candace Owens was saying that, but meanwhile she was hypocritical supporting what Kanye was saying because Kanye was agreeing with her. I'm not saying that they're just entertainers. I'm saying that their opinions should be valued. They're American citizens, but they shouldn't be thought of as thought leaders. You can have an opinion, but you can't lead this truck because you're not trained for this. You can't. You can have an opinion. We all have opinions. We all live in America. We all live in a democracy. We all vote. We all contribute tax dollars, and celebrities contribute a lot of tax dollars. No doubt about it, because they are wealthier than the average American, right? But should they be? Should their opinion be valued so much that they are thought of as leaders in the community? I don't think so. You know what I'm saying? The thing that pisses me off is yes, they have this in the white community. Kane, the wrestler, is a mayor in Knox County. Knox County, Lisa, in Knox County, Tennessee. Jesse Ventura was mayor of Brooklyn Park, Minnesota, and now and governor of the whole state of Minnesota in 1998. So they have this in the white community as well. But the difference is, and Trump is the most egregious example. But the difference is, Trump, people like this, they get well, they used to anyway, get laughed at. Like they'll go to people like this, but this won't be the first people they go to. When it comes to the black community and even the Hispanic community, the first people they go to are entertainers. Why go to entertainers first and then politicians second? Shouldn't you go to the politicians first and the entertainers second? Why go to the people that are not supposed to know and then go to the people that are supposed to know second? Why go to the uninformed first and then the informed second? That doesn't make any sense to me. And it seems like in the urban communities, they go to the entertainers first. You know what I'm saying? They go to, like, they'll ask Cardi B and Ice Cube before they'll ask Cory Booker. They'll ask Cardi B and Ice Cube before they'll ask Tim Scott. You know what I mean? They'll ask Cardi B and Ice Cube before they'll ask Barack Obama. You know what I'm saying? And they don't do that in other communities. They won't. Roseanne will give her opinion, no doubt. Roseanne is a vocal supporter of the political right. She's an entertainer, but they won't go to Roseanne first and then go to Joe Biden second, or go to Roseanne first and uh, and George W. Bush. They'll go to the politician first because they know that the politician, that's their lane. You know what I'm saying? They'll ask an entertainer, maybe. You know what I'm saying? If the entertainer is known to be political, they'll probably ask him or her, but they won't go to them first. They go to the entertainer first. It seems like in the black community or even the Hispanic community. Hell, a YouTube influencer, a Mexican American YouTube influencer, just got elected to city council. American Cholo. Congratulations to Gil, American Cholo. On his election to city council. I watch his YouTube channel. I think he has informed opinions. Again, people can have informed opinions. Entertainers are regular citizens, but I think it speaks to a lack of leadership to me. At least it's saying that entertainers will tell you the truth in a way. Entertainers will lie about how they feel, but politicians will lie. Of course. Well, because they have a stake in it. Entertainers don't have a stake in it, or shouldn't anyway. And there's some truth to that. You know what I'm saying? But if you're going to be an entertainer and you're going to comment on it, be prepared. Come with tangibles. Come with things you want to hold accountable. You want the politicians to be held accountable, but you don't say for what. See American Cholo, the guy American Cholo that I'm talking about, Gil, on YouTube, the influencer that became a city councilman. I think it's L.A. or I know it's like part of the greater Los Angeles area. He only talks about the Hispanic community. The only thing he wants to know is what are you going to do for the Hispanic community, and that's it. He doesn't talk about other communities. He doesn't care about other communities because that's the community that represents the predominantly Hispanic community, and he comes with informs and he comes with things he wants these politicians to do, and he comes with a platform, not representing everybody. And when you call him out on certain shit that the Hispanic community does, he defends it. He stands his ground on it. You know what I'm saying? I watch his channel all the time. He came out with this Cali Mac initiative, trying a way to unify Chicanos, Americans. I forgot what Cali Mac really stands for. But my point is that he comes with things he wants to do, initiatives he wants to do. These rappers, these entertainers, they don't come with any of that. They're easy led astray. If they came prepared, if they came with concise arguments, then being an entertainer would be irrelevant. But the point is that because they're an entertainer, a lot of times they don't have arguments ready. They don't have stuff ready. They just end up, whether it's Cardi B or whether it's Ice Cube here, different sides of the political spectrum, but they don't push back on the interviewer. They don't say, wait a minute, like I said before, they don't say, wait a minute, what you said is wrong. Like, they love to grin and laugh and goof with You saw it with Tucker and Ice Cube. You saw it with Cardi and Joe Biden. Ha ha ha. You know, no. You know, you come to have a serious adult discussion and you come to be taken seriously. It's bad enough you're a rapper. It's bad enough you're an entertainer. They don't take you serious to begin with. So come serious. Don't laugh and joke and goof around and ask Hillary Clinton, does she have hot sauce in her purse like they did on the Breakfast Club one time? You know, like, now is not the time for that. You know, allow yourself to dictate. You dictate the conversation. Because these politicians need you. You don't need them. Tucker Carlson needs Ice Cube to get the support of the black community that he wants to try to convert to Republican. Joe Biden needed Cardi B. Bernie Sanders needed Cardi B. Bernie Sanders, Vivek Swamy, they need the Breakfast Club. The politicians need the entertainer. The entertainer doesn't need the politician. They already have a big platform. The politician needs the vote. So make the politician, you dictate the conversation. You drive the car. You don't let them drive the car. They need your votes. You don't need their votes. And that's the danger of entertainers. Not that they're entertainers, but that they are used to doing things to please audiences. That's the point of entertainment. Doing things to please audiences. We talk about this with regards to wrestling. We always talk about with wrestling how wrestlers will say whatever to pop a crowd, to get a crowd to cheer or boo you, to psychologically manipulate a crowd. And that's why entertainers make bad politicians, in my opinion, because they can be easily swayed. Because that's the job they do. The job they do is to get the most amount of people to pay for or buy into whatever product it is they're selling. And politicians, their job is to get you to do the same thing. So the politicians who are smarter and more slicker talking end up getting the entertainer to go their way rather than the entertainer sticking to their guns and getting the politician to go their way. You know what I'm saying? And then the entertainer ends up looking like they're just happy to be there. Right, perfect example. I was just going to bring that up. Like Trump, Lisa says. The entertainer, and we go back and look at all these interviews that I'm talking about, including this one. See, and it starts off serious. Cardi started off serious with Biden and with Sanders. Ice Cube started off serious with Carlson, but at the end of the conversation, it looked like Tucker won. It looked like Bernie won. It looked like Biden won because they got the entertainer to go along with what they were saying. And the entertainer's the one conducting the interview. Wait a minute. Who's fucking who? You know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, wait a minute. Whose platform is this? You know what I'm saying? Like, they got to be more like Fresh and Fit. Fresh and Fit, when they be having these hoes on, these slutty girls, these 304s, these hoes on their platform. If the particular female says something that they don't agree with, they kick them off the show. That's what these rappers and these DJs and all these entertainers that interview these politicians got to do. Wait a minute, not kick them off the show, but wait a minute. But you just said blah, 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 blah. You contradict yourself. What about this historical fact? Blah, blah, blah. Don't let them sway you. Sway them. And at least it's absolutely right. Trump comes from the entertainment world. That's why Trump could be easily persuaded to do anything. Because he comes from the entertainment world. He can be easily manipulated and easily swayed to do whatever. He doesn't really hold political positions. Like I said before, and we said this before, Trump is an empty cup. he agrees with whatever he feels like is popular. So he felt that the alt right was popular, so he rode that wave in 2016, and that's how he won. He felt anti-Muslim sentiment was popular in 2015 because of ISIS and because of other organizations, and that's the wave he rode, and that's how he won the election. He didn't say anything revolutionary. He didn't say anything new. He didn't introduce any new ideas to the conversation. He just went along with whatever was being said on the internet. Whatever right wing talker at that time that was popular was saying, he was going along with it. And stating it as if it's fact. Because I heard people say, or I saw this article. But I don't really think that there's any really rapper that can go toe to toe with any of these politicians from either side. I don't think any rapper is a quick fix. I would have said Ice Cube. I would have said Ice Cube back in the day. I would have said KRS-One back in the day. But they don't have Ice Cube has proven that he doesn't have the balls to stand by his conviction. One thing I hate, and I'm consistent on this channel when it comes to this. I'm consistent. Go back and look at all my videos. Said the same thing about WAC 100 with the Sereno guy from Compton. I said the same thing about WAC 100 with the big pun thing. I always say the same thing. Be consistent. If you say something, stick by what you said. Don't go back and say the opposite thing because you feel like what is being said is unpopular. If you say something, stick by that something. I can't stand when people do it. That's a pet peeve of mine. I'll call that out every time. Have the courage of your convictions. You say something, stick by something. If you say something that is unpopular, stick by it. Stick by your position. Don't be apologetic. See the difference between um, Ice Cube's disposition in his interview with Tucker Carlson and Andrew Tate's disposition in his interview with Candace Owens. There's a huge difference there, guys. And the difference is that Andrew Tate did not apologize in the interview with Candace Owens for being a webcam producer. Andrew Tate didn't say, "Oh, I was wrong with being a webcam producer. I'm sorry for being a webcam producer." He never said, "I'm sorry" once. He stuck by what he stuck by. My past is my past, and I am what I am, and that's all I'm going to be. Ice Cube came across in the interview. He didn't say it outright, but he came across in the interview as being apologetic for the things that he said against police, for being apologetic for the things that he said against white people, for example, for being apologetic for the things that he has said about Jewish people, for example, how they exploit the black community, or Asians, how they exploit the black. He came across as an apologetic person, and that made me cringe. That makes my skin crawl because that's what I hate. One thing I always loved about Minister Louis Farrakhan, no matter the audience that he's in front of, in 2016, he did an interview with one of the most right-wing commentators on YouTube, somebody that even had the support of Donald Trump, Alex Jones of InfoWars, one of the most right-wing commentators, even more right-wing than George W. Bush, even more right-wing than any other right-wing talking head that's out there. So much so that he's banned from Facebook now. But at this time, in 2016, Alex Jones was out there. And Alex Jones did an interview with Minister Louis Farrakhan. And Minister Louis Farrakhan could have easily, just like with Tate and Candace Owens, Minister Farrakhan could have easily did what Ice Cube did with Tucker Carlson and apologized for all he said and done, apologize for his beliefs that a white person like Alex Jones might not agree with, as far as with the Nation of Islam. Be apologetic, back up like a little punk, and all that. But he did the same thing that Tate did, and he's always done that. No matter who's ever been again. Look at the old interview with him and Mike Wallace. Minister Louis Farrakhan has always stuck to his guns. He's always stuck to his position. Always. No matter what. You have never heard Minister Louis Farrakhan apologize for anything that he's ever said or done. No matter what. No matter who he's being interviewed by. And that's what I've always respected about it. That's what I respect about Tate. That's what I respect about Vince McMahon, owner of the WWE. Whenever you see Vince McMahon, another guy, being interviewed by people, even when he was being accused of in 1999 of Owen Hart's death, he stuck by his position. It was not his fault. He stuck by his position in regards to the charges he was coming against with steroids. He's always stuck to his same position. The interview with Bob Costas in 2002 where he knocked the paper out of his hand. He's always stuck to his position. That's what I respect about Vince. That's what I respect about Farrakhan, Tate. Anybody that's willing to stick by their position and be consistent with their position. People that back up, people that change positions depending on their audience, no respect for them. Because they're only saying what they think the listener wants to hear. So they'll switch up on you, so they have no loyalty. Because they say whatever they think the audience wants to hear. I don't respect people like that. I don't respect people that delete comments. I don't respect people that delete videos because they feel like the videos are unpopular. I've made unpopular videos that people haven't liked they've disagreed, but I keep them up. I keep comments up. I don't take comments down. If I truly believe in something, I truly believe in it. I stand by it. If you truly believe in something and you stand by and you have the courage of your convictions, you stick by it. Can you grow? Can you take in new ideas? Can your ideas change? Sure. But never, never, ever, 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 guys, apologize for your old ideas. Say, I've grown as a person, I've changed as a person, I've taken in new ideas, and I'm open-minded to new suggestions. But never sit there and grovel. Never sit there and beg. Never sit there and say, I'm sorry for the ideas that I once expressed. Because how do we know you're not going to switch on these new ideas? Because you never believed the first ideas in the first place. And if you did, why were you saying them? Stick by your actions. You have the courage of your convictions. Don't be a punk. That's what I didn't like about this interview with Ice Cube. I felt like he switched positions way too much because he knew he was saying what Tucker Carlson wanted to hear. Now, maybe he was playing Tucker Carlson. Maybe he was playing him, doing a psychological game, like I said that they should do with Trump. Maybe he was doing that. I don't know. But if he's doing that, then he should encourage his followers to be independent and not just go to Republicans. Because if he goes to Republicans, then it shows that he wasn't doing that in the first place. Anyway, guys, that's all I got to say about this interview. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell button to see my next video is coming out. Love you guys. Peace. Oh, and thank you, Lisa, for contributing, of course. Thank you guys for watching. Peace.